In 1999, the theme of the movie Matrix shocked the world. What if we are plugged into a virtual reality and the external world is just a simulation? Philosophically, this is an interesting theme because it takes us to the limits of human perception. Let me explain. We live in two worlds, the external world and the internal world. The internal world is subjective, the external world is objective, and we can share them with others. This is the philosophical challenge. We can't prove that the external world exists. Are we specks in a universe, or is the universe a speck in our minds? Are we plugged into a virtual reality? In order to prove something, we need objectivity. If we can't say for certain that the external world is real, we lose objectivity. And when we lose objectivity, we lose science. And when we lose science, we lose proofs. When we arrive at the limits of perception, we also arrive at the limits of probability. That's the bad news. The good news is that we don't always need proofs. We can live with assumptions and probabilities. For instance, we can safely assume that the universe is not a speck in our minds because our minds don't have control over the external world, which is so vast, complex and wonderful. All worldviews rely on such unprovable assumptions. The technical term for that is axiom. An axiom is a statement or proposition on which rests a concept or worldview. Religion is based on the axiom that there is a God. We can't prove that God exists. Neither can we prove that God doesn't exist. Science is based on philosophical axioms. For example, that nothing can exist and not exist at the same time. Our idea of reality relies on the axiom that the external world exists independently of our minds. As mentioned, we can neither prove nor disprove that. Philosophy makes people aware of the axioms on which they base their worldviews. Instead of believing blindly in axioms, a philosopher ponders them and makes a conscious decision which ones to accept and which ones to reject. Turns out, a worldview isn't a matter of truth, but a matter of choice. Those who believe blindly in axioms may get scared when someone questions them, and fear makes angry. If we consciously decide which axioms we trust, we become impervious to philosophical assaults. Further, the comprehension of the relativity of truth makes us more tolerant towards people who decided to believe in other axioms. Last but not least, we are ready to accept the consequences of our philosophical decisions. For instance, Buddhistic monks believe in the illusion of the external world. The consequence of that decision is that they need to live in monasteries. The most famous philosopher, Socrates, made it his life work to point out philosophical axioms to his contemporaries. His motto was, "I know that I know nothing." If we can't know whether our axioms are true, how can we know whether our worldviews are true? With that, Socrates angered his contemporaries, who beat him up on a regular basis. We can safely assume that the external world exists independently of our minds because we have very little power over it. Let me give you another example of such a philosophical probability. The DNA is a chemical digital code, not binary like computers, but quaternary. The DNA is a string of four bases, A, T, G, and C. This chemical digital code builds and maintains human bodies. Since the DNA controls all bodily processes, we could say that it is our body's operating system. The human DNA is so complex that we need supercomputers to map it. This complexity of the DNA in our bodies begs the question whether life came about by accident or whether the DNA was designed. According to science, our universe did not initially contain life. The current theory is that life came about through arbitrary circumstances. This concept is called abiogenesis. Abiogenesis is questionable. Think about it. How many coincidences are needed to bring about amino acids? How many coincidences are needed to combine amino acids into proteins which are made up of hundreds or thousands of amino acids? How many coincidences are required to produce a cell that compares to a protein like a city to a brick? How many coincidences are required for the first multicell being to form? Now, what is the sum of those coincidences? Trillions of coincidences? Quadrillions of coincidences? Googleplexes of coincidences? On top of that, what is the likelihood of those early life forms to survive in a geological hostile environment? Last but not least, the law of entropy should have prevented this unbelievable string of coincidences. Organic life is an imbalance, a progressive imbalance to be precise. Fred Hoyle, a famous English astronomer, calculated the probability of abiogenesis. He said that the probability of accidental life compares to the chance that a tornado sweeps through a junkyard and assembles a Boeing 747. We can't prove it, but we can safely assume that the DNA is designed. Who or what designed the DNA? Fred Hoyle was an atheist, and he believed that the DNA came from other planets. But that doesn't answer the question of the origin of life, because who designed the DNA of those who designed ours? We can safely assume that that which designed the DNA must be outside this universe. Mind that this is not a proof of God. In order to prove God, we would need to define God, formulate a thesis about his existence, and then prove that thesis. That's unlikely to happen, since God is kinda undefinable. The certainty that life is designed raises a few interesting questions. How does that extra cosmic intelligence look like? Is it a single intelligence or a collective intelligence? What is its IQ or collective IQ? How does it get access to our universe? What does it want? Philosophically, we can't know anything for certain since knowledge is based on axioms. Truth is relative to contexts, and contexts are based on axioms. This is true as far as intellectual knowledge goes. But we can expand our consciousness and become aware of other realities and higher aspects of ourselves. That's what enlightenment is all about. The technical term for knowledge through expansion of consciousness is gnosis. Gnosis is not objective. Those who succeeded in expanding their consciousness can't share their gnosis, but if we follow in their footsteps, we can subjectively verify that which they told us. And we will belong to those who know, but cannot tell. Thank you for watching this episode of Enlightenment Bites. I hope you enjoyed this video and discovered an inspiration or two. Please help to spread the light with a like and a share. And don't forget to subscribe. Love and light.